So it's a slightly different video today, but let's get straight into it. This abdication crisis concerns King Edward VIII of the United Kingdom in the interwar years, that is, between World War I and World War II. But what might have caused him to have to abdicate? Well, it was his choice of queen, and her name was Wallis Simpson. So who was Wallis Simpson? Edward had met her in 1931. She was an American citizen, but most importantly, she had already divorced her first husband, the US Navy pilot Win Spencer, in 1927. A few years after they met, possibly around 1934 or 1935, it's believed that Edward and Wallis were already lovers. And this was difficult because she was still married to her second husband, who was the British businessman Ernest Simpson. Edward's relationship to Wallis actually caused problems within his own personal relationships with members of his family. It was especially his relationship with his father, King George V, that suffered, even though Edward unconvincingly made the claim that he was not being intimate with Wallis. It's a shame, really, because his father passed away quite soon after, and Edward VIII was crowned on the 20th of January 1936. People in Britain were very worried that Edward was close to marrying Wallis, and this was especially the case when she filed for a divorce in October of the same year. Up until this point in time, the British media had kept silence on the whole matter, out of respect for Edward's privacy, but he was informed by his private secretary, Alec Harding, that this could not continue, as the country was so opposed to the marriage. But why was it such a problem to marry her? This comes through in a couple of different reasons. The main one was probably the religious opposition. The Church of England, which is the state religion in Britain and the religion of the British royal family, forbade the remarriage of divorcees in their churches if the previous spouses of those divorcees were still alive. And by marrying Simpson, Edward would be directly contravening church law. And this was problematic because the King of England was actually the head of the Anglican Church. And if the head of the Anglican Church wasn't seen to be following the rules of the Anglican Church, then A, they wouldn't be fit to be the head of the church, and B, it would decrease their legitimacy a lot. There was also more general social opposition. Simpson was thought to have been intimate with others during her relationship with Edward, and many people also thought that she was feigning interest in Edward and was actually interested in his net worth. There was another political problem, as there were some reports that Wallis Simpson was actually a German spy, and there were even reports sent from Wallis's own guard to Downing Street that alluded to this. On Monday the 16th of November 1936, the Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin was invited to Buckingham Palace, and here the King informed him that he intended to marry Wallis Simpson. The Prime Minister responded, saying that the Queen becomes the Queen of the country, which alluded to his own belief that the people should have a say in who their Queen was. It became increasingly clear that the British government would oppose this marriage. If Edward rejected his minister's advice on not marrying her, then Baldwin told Edward that the government would resign en masse. Baldwin drew up three possible options. The first was that they had a normal marriage, where Simpson became queen, but this was opposed by almost everybody. The second was a morganatic marriage, where she would not become a queen, but Edward would still be allowed to retain his throne. And the third was that Edward abdicated, and so he was free to make any marital choices that he wanted to, without widespread constitutional implications. Since public opinion was mainly against him, Edward decided that if the British people and government would not have Wallis Simpson as their queen, then he must abdicate. So on the 5th of December, Edward chose this option to abdicate, and 5 days later, on the 10th of November, his abdication was secured. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, it really does help the channel, and subscribe to keep up to date with the content. I will see you in the next video.